Hello, my name's Taylor. Thank you for joining us to celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Month. Your Toronto Zoo's mission is connecting people, animals, and conservation science to fight extinction. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land I am standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Miigwech. Hello everyone, welcome to your Toronto Zoo. You're joining me today here in our traditional knowledge trail, and I'd like to share a story with you, the Anishinaabe creation story. Long ago, the Anishinaabe people were living on the land, and it was seen that they were living in a very negative way. There was lots of hate and disrespect. There was lots of shame and lots of fear. And so it was decided by the Great Spirit that there would be a big flood. And so this flood flooded the entire world and killed all the Anishinaabe people. However, Nanabozo was able to survive the flood, and so were the flying and water creatures of the earth. After the giant flood, Nanabozo was floating on a log in the water. And the loon and some of the other water and flying animals, like the otter, came up to him and said, Nanabozo, what are we going to do about these big floods? And Nanabozo said, well, I'm going to dive down into this water and I'm going to see and find some land. So Nanabozo dives into the water and swims down. He comes back up a short while later and says to the animals, I was unable to even see the bottom. I couldn't make it. Maybe one of you can try. The loon, known as an expert diver, decided I'm going to try. So the loon dives into the water, swims down, and comes back up and says I wasn't able to make it to the bottom. It's too deep. The otter tries next and says, I spent my whole life in the water. I'm an expert swimmer. I'm going to dive down and try. So the otter dives down into the water, comes back up a short while later and says, I couldn't even see the bottom. I couldn't make it. All the animals in Nanabozo sat around and they were stumped. They didn't know what they were to do. The muskrat then came forward and said, I would like to dive down to the bottom and grab some mud. And all the animals laughed, because muskrats aren't really known to be deep divers and extremely strong swimmers. But the muskrat was determined. And so the muskrat decided to dive down to the bottom of that water. And so all the animals in Nanabozo waited. And they waited, and they waited. And eventually, the muskrat came back up out of the water, and its fist clenched. Nanabozo came to the muskrat and picked him up. And unfortunately, that muskrat had died. But in his paw, in his hand, was a handful of mud, of the soil from the bottom. Astonished at the muskrat's tenacity, Nanabozo took that mud. The turtle, Miss Guadesi, came forward and said, to honor the muskrat sacrifice, I will host this mud, this soil on my back. And so Nanabozo placed that mud, that soil, on the back of the turtle. Just then, all four wind directions blew at the same time, spreading that soil out into what we currently know as North America, or as the Anishinaabe people call Michikiminzi. This is the creation story of the Anishinaabe people. And this relates to the land that I am standing on, which is known as Turtle Island, or North America. Miigwech.